for a signature at some point, and I routinely see, more times than not, paid for by the PTA. Our kids are doing some amazing things. They're seeing things that they might not be able to see with their families. They're going to Pittsburgh, they're doing local field trips. It's amazing, these major gifts that you've given to the art department and to music. I think all of us want you to know that this doesn't go unnoticed. We really appreciate all the extra work that you do. So thank you for being the leadership, for your leadership in this, and thank you for helping to wrangle other parents to help with all the activities that you do.
Thank you.
What is your Facebook page called? College Square PTO?
College Square PTO.
Yeah. The web address is on here too.
I think that we've recently, you have to have an association with the school or have a child in the school to be allowed into the group.
Okay, I do. I got one at every building. So.
There you go.
I'm part of Dutch Ridge. I didn't even know College Square PTO existed, so that's great to know. And I appreciate it.
I think he was just volunteering to
Yeah,
help.
we got Valentine parties on Friday.
There we go.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you again.
We love it when the dads can come in and volunteer too. It's a big deal for the kids.
And we won't be offended if you have other obligations that you need to go to.
That's what I
You don't
just
have-
said. We have lots of homework. Second grade.
Understood.
Thank you guys very much.
You're welcome.
All right, on to board committee reports, curriculum and staff development, Mrs. DeKay. Facilities and transportation, Mr. Thomas.
We are going to hold the meeting on February 19th at 5:30. So if anybody outside of our committee would like to come to it, it's going to be the building visits of hopefully all three buildings. Mr. Hines is going to take us around like we talked about last month and just give us a quick overview of each of the buildings. Hopefully we can get to all three, but that's going to be February 19th at 5:30. I believe Dr. Rowe and Mr. Hines confirmed that the administration can meet that. I don't know. I think everybody in our committee said that they could be a part of it, except can you do it now? Okay, so you can do it. I know you said the 20th. So I think we're good to go as a committee, and the administration's on board. So if anybody else wants to go, just I don't know if they should let Scott or Dr. Rowe know, just so we can, if we have to publicly advertise it, if we're going to have the majority there or not. So that's it, though.
Employee relations, Mr. Bovalino.
Yeah, we recently had a meeting to discuss getting a feel for the community and other folks in the district, just to get some feedback on how we're doing and how we're performing, and talked about strategic planning, and kind of reviewed a little bit of the comprehensive plan. So, productive meeting.
Why was the consensus to not survey employees? And I think I saw the notes that stated we wanted to incorporate that in with more broader community strategic plan. But why not just separate that, just a pulse for us? The community is one thing, and you're going to get such varying answers because you're going to have parents and individuals that don't have kids in the district or kids attending anymore, and it's going to be a variety. I think there was a handful of us that were really interested in just the district, all district employees. So I'm under the assumption, based on the notes, that that is not happening.
Well, I mean,
and I'm sorry I couldn't make the meeting. I think everyone understands why.
Yeah, I don't know. I could speak to it if you'd like me to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that when the folks that were at that meeting, we kind of went over some of the pros and cons of doing that, and I think that the cons kind of outweighed why you would do that, specifically because, that culture is a lot of what the principals kind of do. So to get their feedback first would probably be important. Also, teachers do get surveyed in a myriad of ways, specifically through the Act 82, so we can glean that information, and there's already data available that we can pull from without having an additional survey. And I think the biggest thing Luke, for you and the other people that were wondering, we weren't exactly sure what the goal was. What do you want to know? So in order to get to that point, we kind of have to know, first of all, what exactly it is that you're looking to find out. And then
To be
we
honest,
create that survey.
I'd like to know what I don't know.
A little more specific.
It could be a million different things. It's all about the question. It's all about having.
A question of that magnitude, though, like, if we could just kind of narrow that focus, we might already have data that exists.
Fair enough. I'd love to see what the Act 82 data suggests or is telling us based off of that, how relevant or how recent it is as well. But more importantly is just, and I'm sure Dr. Rowe and leadership within the district, you have a pulse, but I did a lot of studying this in my master's program. When we don't, when things are just asked in front of people, hey, how are you doing? Are you getting everything you need? Resources, whatever it might, support, things like that. People are not always going to be forthright to you. They might be very apprehensive. Data that I've researched and seen is they're going to be very apprehensive to tell you what the honest answer is, if it is opposite of what you would expect. So.
And it's your position that the teachers would be less apprehensive to answer you?
Not me, us.
You, the board.
Yeah, but I think that
Well-
what came out of that committee, though, Luke, was that the folks were there unanimously agreed that they didn't want to move forward with that.
And I couldn't attend, so I couldn't say
Be the
why I
dissenting.
disagree.
I think
with-
another issue would be that without additional information, it would seem that it crosses a line between governance and management, where the board is setting broad goals and governing, and the administration would be kind of taking those, doing those types of getting the pulse, as you put it. I think that's why we wanted to know more. What is it that you're interested in knowing?
Yeah.
It has to be more specific than what I don't know.
Yeah. No.
Right? So if we could narrow that down, we might already have information. And then with regard to surveying the community, I think it's a fantastic idea. And I'd like to marry that with our strategic planning process, because the first step in the strategic planning process is to find out from the community some things that they value and that they want to see in the school.
Yeah.
That brings me to
And
the
that's fine.
conclusion that, when you do that, let's keep it focused, let's tie it to a strategic plan, but let's think it through to conclusion. So have a plan to address whatever challenges may arise from such a poll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, teachers or employees, all employees, tied or not tied, I would think that we would want to know that information as well. And if there's something that we do learn from that information, that we would be able to develop a plan to be able to assist, help, recorrect, redirect, whatever it is. Or if we're sitting in a really good position, we're like, wow, we're doing a damn good job. Everyone seems happy and everything's good. I mean, that would be phenomenal to get that kind of feedback, especially in the upper percentiles. But if the board is leaning the other way, I'm only one. When we have transitions, private organizations, public organizations, it doesn't matter. To be able to understand what the employees think, feel, and what their true understanding is of what they're doing, how they're being supported across the board. And I could certainly get more specific as far as questions. You shared some great survey information that we could dig into a little bit more. I'm not going to beat it down a dead road if that's where it seems to be. If it's going to tie it to the community, then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the board had specific questions, whether it was some suggestions on survey ideas, then we could see what data we already have, and if there's things that we don't have, we can certainly revisit it. I don't think that it has to be a an issue where we make a decision now and it never comes back up. So, you know, if you want to, you know, work on some stuff and get it over to us maybe at the next committee meeting for employee relations, we can have that. We can have it be kind of a working dialogue and then go from there.
Good enough. Thanks for the input.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Kind of feeding off of what Luke was asking. Does the board or district do kind of regular employee opinion surveys?
We have different perception surveys, certainly.
On a
Based-
regular basis
based
to
on-
benchmark against?
Yeah, sure, based on what's going on at the building at any given time.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things, yeah. Again, let's move on. This is gonna,
Okay.
it's not going anywhere.
Athletic committee, Mr. Pickerton?
Nothing really new. We meet Wednesday at 5 o'clock though, so.
All right. Finance is me. We have a meeting next week, and obviously we're going to be talking about a lot of finance stuff up here tonight. Disciplinary, Mrs. Hill.
Nothing to report.
School safety, Mr. Bardelli.
Unfortunately, I was unavailable last week to attend our
I
meeting.
can give a.
Would you mind?
Sure.
We should have talked today.
No, that's fine. So, I have spoken with Chief Madgar and Chief Blinn regarding having all officers on the forces tour each one of our buildings. Not only is this something that is required by Act 44, so that they can familiarize themselves with the layout, but it's also just good practice. Both of the chiefs of police are absolutely on board with doing this, and we are going to do it over a 30-day period where the SRO at the middle school, high school, and also at College Square will be the guide for the police officers, both from Brighton Township and Beaver, and the DARE officer from Dutch Ridge will lead those tours. So we believe in a 30-day period, all of the officers will have had an opportunity to cycle through, and that was one of our goals. And I'll be discussing the logistics of that with our administrative team this week. We'll also be sharing with the officers who haven't seen them all of our 3D videos that we have currently stored in the cloud. They start out with a map view, literally a piece of paper and the camera looking down on it, and then the person is walking, and you can stop and go into different classrooms. It's very informative. So in the event that we had a problem, those would also be good during an emergency. I'm not sure if the board is aware, but all Brighton Township and Beaver police officers have a fob to enter any of our district buildings in case of an emergency. And those are tagged to their respective police stations. And you may also not be aware that all of our surveillance cameras are accessible by Brighton Township and Beaver Police Department, as well as the County 911 Center. They're all on the IP system. Brighton Township, or Dutch Ridge, which is in Brighton Township, just got the biggest facelift of cameras. So we're working on getting those newest cameras. I believe there were 17 that were put in. We're working on getting those hooked up to the 911 center as well. We just had some safety drills at the middle school and high school. These look different at each building because of the age of the kids. So sometimes the kids are perfectly aware of what we're doing and we're talking to them and including them, and sometimes we're just telling them this is a time to follow the directions of the teacher. So we just had one of those last week at the middle school, high school, and we practiced lockdown and evacuation protocols. And we did that with a variety of issues like weather problems, interior threats, and exterior threats. And I also wanted to mention with regard to safety that the district last year purchased an online training tool for Alice, which is our lockdown. It's alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. It's a protocol for safety. And we purchased an online system, and we have had over 200 of our employees just this year recertify. So I think that's going particularly well. One of the pieces of feedback that we got from our community group was that we needed to include custodians and substitutes and the like, and so we are doing that at this point. And we had two of our district, our two district nurses take the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency's provided training for psychological first aid. So in the case of an emergency, people behave differently and have different emotional needs, and now we have our two nurses certified by PEMA. The last thing would be that there has been some discussion about having an SRO at Dutch Ridge. We are in communication. We had one meeting with Chief Blinn and the manager of Brighton Township, Brian Dehart, thank you. And we anticipate getting some numbers about what that would cost the district as early as Wednesday of this coming week. What I think people should know about what Brighton Township Police Department has already done is that for the past several years, they have been providing a DARE officer several days a week, and it's to the tune of $20,000. So they have just been quietly providing that ongoing support and having an officer there several days a week.
We've paid none of that.
And we have paid none of that. A while ago, 10 plus years ago, that was covered by a state grant. When that grant went away, Brighton Township just quietly picked up the cost. So I think that's something that the board needs to recognize as well. So that would be a wrap up of school safety. Is that all? Other than that, I'm not doing anything.
Scott, so with the SRO officer, I know obviously the discussion with Chief Blinn and Dehart was pertaining strictly to Dutch Ridge. Now we still have College Square, which is the third building. And I know I had talked, and I don't know how much we want to get into this right now, but the original idea that I at least had was seeing if that Brighton Township, if we did add them, if they could handle both Dutch Ridge and College Square. So have the officer do both. Because if we had them up at Dutch Ridge and we're still leaving College Square, I know that Officer Blinn comes down in the morning when the kids are getting off the bus and all that, and he does hang out, I think, at College Square for a short period of time, but for the most part, he's over at the high school. So if we did do this, my thing would be, I always felt that we needed to have Officer Blinn at the high school. I think the high school needs the most attention as far as having them full time, and then have somebody else that can handle the other two buildings. And from what I know the feedback from Dehart was that he didn't want to bring a BT officer down to Beaver because of issues with the different jurisdictions. But I know that you can solve that with a simple, well, I don't know if it's simple, but an intergovernmental agreement between the two boroughs. So, Doctor, I don't know if you have an opinion or if anybody here has an opinion on that, but my thing was to try to press them to, if we do it, can we have them handle both buildings and work up some kind of an agreement between the two governing bodies?
One SRO in both buildings, is that
One their officer not just spending the full day up at Dutch Ridge, but instead he would be, and how we manage that would be up for debate, but have him taking turns going to both buildings, while Blinn is fully over here at the high school. But I know he gave us some pushback on that, so I don't know if there's any further talks about that or not.
Once, at the initial meeting, that was the big concern for both Chief Blinn, who's the chief of police in Brighton Township, and Brian Dehart, who's the township manager. Their biggest concern with that was the jurisdictional thing. We didn't have any discussion with them at that point about any type of intergovernmental agreement. I think memorandum of understanding, something like that. I know that there was concern, I guess, and I'm not sure how this would be something we'd have to talk with our solicitor about, and obviously each respective municipality would have to kind of get on board, but we didn't have that discussion. It was really more about just getting a full-time BT officer at this point. It's certainly a discussion that we can have. Because it sounds like we're probably going to need another safety committee meeting, maybe even a joint one with finance, once we get the logistical numbers of how we're going to do this, if we want to add another SRO, how we're going to pay for it, what they're going to do, what type of cost sharing we're going to ask the township to participate in with the district. And at that point, I think it's something that, obviously you feel pretty strongly about, and I understand.
Well, I don't know if Janet can speak to it. I mean, I know that I was told, and I know DeHart's opinion was that that's not the case, but I was told that you can have an officer, as long as he was coming down and just strictly being at College Square and not patrolling outside of the building, that you, an intergovernmental agreement can solve that.
That's
Is
the
that
agreement
correct?
I would do, yeah.
So we could do something where they would allow them, or Beaver Borough would allow them to come down and be present in that
They
building.
would be a part of that agreement too.
Another way to get around that is if the district were to hire the officer. Currently, we contract for that service, which, I think is the better route to go. Keep them employed by their respective police department, but you could employ them in the district and then they can go to any district building.
But then you're paying the benefits.
Oh, yeah, you take on a lot of
Well-
extra things, but there are other ways around
If they're
it.
contracted out, we don't have to pay.
We could be paying for that anyways, depending on what the
Yeah,
numbers
I mean,
come back.
realistically, you'll probably end up paying for it anyway. I mean, the numbers that Mr. DeHart were initially talking was inclusive of their pension obligations, healthcare, those kind of things, so.
And it was for not
And-
even a position, not a role, right?
Well, that's another thing that we're
He
gonna
gave
have
us
to.
the fully loaded cost per year for that officer.
Right.
Obviously, they would prorate it to what the school year would
9 months
be.
versus 12.
First 12, yeah. And those are things that we're gonna have to talk with them about, revenue sharing or cost, not revenue sharing, cost sharing with them, because ultimately, police forces, we're gonna ask them to hire a new person, and they can't hire a person just for 9 months of the year, right? They have to have a full-time person, so, and this is why realistically, when we probably wanna get, once we get this ball a little further down the road, even Beaver involved in these discussions, if we wanna talk about, Janet trying to draft an intergovernmental agreement, making sure Beaver and BT can agree on how some things are worded, because ultimately, after we draft it and are okay with it, we're gonna need the Brighton Township Supervisors and the Beaver Borough Council to all agree to everything as well. Because we're gonna need all three to kind of play on the same team, us and both municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get the vibe of the board because, and not that anybody's agreed on anything, I know we're still preliminary, but I think we should try to do this sooner than later. I mean, every month we push this back. We're already, halfway through the school year roughly? So I don't know if our goal is to get this hopefully done sometime this school year. And if so, when can we schedule the next meeting? When can we get the ball rolling on that? My other thought was I would hate to, my personal belief is if we're gonna put somebody up in Dutch Ridge full-time, then we still have College Square not really being utilized. So I feel like if we're gonna do this, we should find a way to have all three buildings being utilized by the SRO officer and not just two of the three.
And I know when we asked Brian last week for the numbers, he told Dr. Rowe this week we'd have some stuff, so we're hoping to get that sooner rather than later. At least get the numbers for the board to make a decision.
So Scott, how does that work if it's something not budgeted?
So anything not budgeted, correct me if I'm wrong here, John, we would just be either taking from fund balance or cutting something else.
That's it.
Those are really the only choices.
Or get a grant.
Or get a grant, which we already have a
For the
large.
high school.
Correct, we received a large, thanks to Dr. Rowe and Mrs. Wagner Deach wrote a large school safety grant that we received last year. A portion of which is paid each year over 3 years, 4 years.
Right.
And a large portion has already been used.
An already portion has already been used, correct.
And historically, Dr. Rowe, you can speak to this. This is my last point here. I know Beaver Borough, their police department has done this for $30,000 per year for the last, I don't even know how many years. I don't know if you could speak to that or not. But I know just this current school year is when they upped it, because I was on Borough Council, they upped it from the 30 to the 60, correct?
That's correct.
And part of that was because in the grant that Dr. O and Mrs. Wagner each received, we get $25,000 per year for the SRO for the next several years, 25, 30, something like that.
Yeah, there are a couple of grants, so.
Yeah. All right, number 8, Beaver Memorial Library, Mrs. Yates is not here. Anyone have an update? All right.
We got a letter from them.
We got a letter from.
I opened it, so.
Oh, okay. Number 9, legislative, Mr. Baradelli.
2 interesting things that I've learned about over my time off. From a federal standpoint, I believe it's in the House, if I'm not mistaken, Rebuild America School Act, focused on long-term improvement of public schools. Man, that would stink if that gets passed here over the next year or something and all this money becomes available. Could we get reimbursed for all the work we're doing to upgrade all of our infrastructure? Don't know what's going to happen there, but interesting. It's in the House committee. And then from a state level, Wolf's budget is out. He's requesting $400 million increase in funding. There's also some hoopla going on about the charter schools and the charter school reform law that's inside of that budget, which would basically give one price per student, regardless of.
It's $9,500.
$9,500, correct. So, I mean.
One price per student, but not special needs students, or is
No. Or right now there's 4 categories for special needs pricing.
Yeah, I don't know special needs. I know the regular education was a flat rate at $9,500 is what's proposed. I don't know about
Yep.
special education.
Interesting in there, it was pretty bland in the sense that it didn't give me much detail as my research could uncover, but they want to take, the budget wants to take the minimum wage for educators from $18,500 to $45,000. I don't know what they're considering educators. Is that?
Teachers.
Is it just teachers? It's not
It's
teaching
just
aides?
teachers.
It's just teachers.
The state minimum salary for a teacher is $18,500.
Okay. So that, and in our scale, do we start under 45 at all across the board in any capacity of a teacher?
We are either at or very close to 45.
Okay, so if it does pass, I mean, we wouldn't be as impacted as potentially some other school districts.
True.
But it still would impact us. Anyways, interesting to see what happens here in the state. But other than that, that's it.
And real quick, I'd like to piggyback while we're in legislative. I attended a meeting of the Quality Education Council for Beaver County. I believe it's the Partnership of Development and Economic, something like that. It was on the state of education in Beaver County, looking at enrollment trends, government issues, funding, what other counties and other states are doing. Very informative. We're going to get some more data. They've got a big grant to do this, and more information and ideas are being shared. So, number 10, Beaver County Career and Technology Center. That's me. I attended the first board meeting. Really was blown away by what goes on there, and even the limited time that I was there, to see with the programs and capabilities that they have. They invited us to have a board meeting there. If we'd like to hold one of our work or voting sessions there, they said that they would be more than happy to open it up, and then also either before or after to give us a guided tour to show us the facilities, just something to keep in mind. It was really pretty impressive, and they're constantly working to improve and update, and they're working with the local CCBC, which is right next door, as well as other four-year institutions. It's really, again, really impressive, the things that they're doing
It would be
Mm-hmm.
a nice way to show our support for the students who go to school here from our district.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Scott, can you get a couple of tentative board meeting dates
Sure.
over to them, see if they can accommodate? I think
Yeah.
that would be pretty cool. I agree.
Obviously, the only thing is we just have to advertise, but other than that. All right. Number 11, the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit, Mr. Boglino.
Yeah, so I was seated last month, so I'm a board member there, and the topic of conversation was mainly focused on New Horizons, the work that they do, their budget, and also keeping kids and teachers safe. So a lot of the talk revolved around adding more staff. So introductory meeting, and looking forward to moving forward on that board as well.
Excellent. We're gonna add an A2 and a 1.5, however you wanna do it. Just the superintendent giving kind of a state of the district.
So for instruction, I think it might be interesting for people to know that we invited Apple, using some grant money that we received, to come and meet with some of our teachers. The person's title, I believe, is Apple Instructional Design Specialist. He came and did some training with teachers, and the goal was to have the teachers be prepared to help kids create with the iPads and with the software and the apps. So often kids are consuming the information using the iPads, in which case it's not much better than just a digital notebook. And instead, we want to kind of move things toward the students creating. And a lot of teachers already do this. There are plenty of teachers who have flipped classrooms already. And even those teachers were able to find something that was interesting. Then that specialist spent 2 days with the teachers and did co-taught a lesson with each of the teachers. We received such great feedback that 14 more teachers are going to go through the training. So we're pretty excited about that, and I'm really happy that it can all be covered by a grant.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, I would like to give a couple of student accolades. And I do this with the caveat that there are so many really cool things that our students are doing that I can't possibly name every kid. So I'm going to attempt in these state of the district conversations to focus on things that are at the state level or higher.
You realize state of the district was sad.
State of the, yes, my sad memo. So the first one will be Emma Pavlik. She scored her 1,001st point last week, and any player who can score over 1,000 points didn't do that by accident. There was a lot of work that went into that. It's a major accomplishment, and you know that every team who came in had a focus on her, and somehow she still managed to score over 1,000 points in her career, so fantastic. We had 9 district orchestra students qualify and participate in a PMEA concert at IUP last week. 4 district band musicians qualified and participated in a PMEA Honors Band Festival at Westminster College. 2 district jazz band musicians qualified and played in a PMEA District 5 Jazz Festival at the Slippery Rock University. A team consisting of 5 middle school students qualified for the state math counts competition. They placed first in the region, and then 2 kids that were also there placed second and fourth, respectively. So those 2 are going to participate as individuals. And finally, 4 FBLA students, that's Future Business Leaders of America students, qualified for the state competition in Hershey. So we have some really talented kids doing some really neat things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. A couple of faculty accolades. Back in January, we had a team of teachers that participated in the Polar Plunge, which is telling your family and friends if they give you money, you will jump in an icy river.
Psychotic.
Yeah. And I love the fact that our teachers did this. I offered to pay a couple of people to participate as long as they would wear some costumes that I would provide. Nobody took me up on that, but we were able to raise $10,000 for Special Olympics. And that is a tribute to our teachers. That's fantastic. And their families who were willing to put this money together.
But
Whoever organizes it next year, let us know. Luke is our volunteer from the board.
Yeah.
And he
Next
is
year,
going to take up
next week.
Carrie's costume.
I say, I have a special costume
Yes.
for you.
There we go.
So when we say Beaver is someplace special, these are the types of individuals we're talking about. People who are literally willing to jump in a freezing river to raise money for kids. There's a lot I will do, that's not one of them. Another faculty accolade is Susan Metelsky. Susan Metelsky is our choir director, and she was named the recipient of this year's PMEA Citation of Excellence Award. And there are only 12 of those awards given across the state every year, and it recognizes exceptional teachers who have made lasting contributions to their field. In addition to being our choir director, our chorus director, she also teaches music theory 1 and 2, guitar 1 and 2, and if you want to see somebody do something really special, watch someone try and teach a 7th grader to play guitar. She also teaches a theater arts course, which does a lot with improv. She's taught African drumming, and she does a really cool class called Music Lab, where she will teach people different instruments and teach them how to mix it using technology. It is a really neat thing. And when she came into education, I'm sure that she didn't have all of those skills, but again, she is somebody that makes Beaver a special place because she is constantly learning. This will be her 17th musical where she is the director, and the musical this year is My Favorite Year. So we want to recognize Mrs. Metelsky for all she does, but in particular for receiving the PMEA Citation of Excellence Award. Several other things that this will go really quickly, because I feel like I'm talking a little bit too much here. Our Snow Makeup Day will be April 9th. April 9th is now a student day. We are hosting a free parent workshop. It's called Getting on the Same Page. And 2 people from the BVIU, from their tax staff, are going to come and present on student behaviors and some of the tough decisions that parents have to make. That is February 12th. It's in the library right here, and it's free. And if you're not seeing these, they're on Twitter, and they are also on our district's website, and we are trying to have one of these every month for parents to come to. The curriculum night for the high school is this week. It's February 13th, and generally this is for parents who are going to have kids in 8th through 11th grade. You get a kind of a peek at what the curriculum is, what kind of courses we're offering, and a chance to chat with the teachers in a casual setting. All of this happens in the gymnasium. All of the teachers set up in there, so you're not walking too far to learn about that. And finally, kindergarten registration is now open. We have a link on our main page. It's also on College Square's page, and it is also on Twitter. So there is your state of the district.
Is curriculum, I'm sorry, were you about to say?
I just want to know what time curriculum.
I believe it's at 6 o'clock, but I would check our district website before you.
Is it on there?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Is that parent and kid, child?
Yes, absolutely, because you're going to be creating kind of a mock schedule, saying these are the things that I'm really interested in taking, and hearing from the teachers, here's a layout of what you would learn if you took this class.
My son always doesn't give me all of the information.
You're
but-
kidding.
But I, right? But I literally just signed his schedule for next year.
Okay.
That's not concrete.
No,
We were talking
it's
about.
fluid, it's flexible.
Yeah.
We
were
want to
talking
provide
about
him with
it.
the individualized experience of his dreams.
And they have, like, the guidance counselors had, when we went, they had their schedule available if you wanted to redo it as you talk to different teachers.
There's a couple. This parent, he was not sure. I was trying to leave. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right, on to new business, approve amendment.
Scott, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Rowe
Sir.
and board with, is it Mrs. Mistowski?
Metelsky.
Metowski, I'm sorry. It is Mrs. Do we or can we provide our own letter of?
I think that'd be lovely.
So, for
Yes.
the board to formally acknowledge her work in receiving this, put it on our letterhead and have the president and you sign it.
That actually came up at that meeting.
Yeah.
Did it?
Generally, what happens when we do, actually any of these things, when we hire somebody, when somebody leaves the district, when we're commending an adult or an athlete, I write them a letter after the meeting so that they do have it on letterhead. And if it's a staff person, it'll go in their personnel file and the like. I like the idea of the board sending one as well.
And something we should get used to. More great information from our staff that we acknowledge them.
All right, item B, new business, approve amended minutes from December 16th, 2019.
So moved.
Wait,
Hold on.
no, wrong meeting.
We're not voting.
Yeah, we're just talking about what we're gonna do next week.
Yeah, this,
You can vote if you want to.
this is a simple one. We overlooked, when these minutes were previously approved, one of the things that was added in at the last minute didn't make it into the minutes that you approved. It is now in there, and that was when we were hiring Mrs. O'Leary. We added on that she had to get a different certification so that she could teach more grade levels at the elementary. And she had agreed to that previously, so we added that in, and it didn't make the minutes that you approved, so we're gonna fix that.
Okay, number 2, authorize bond refunding.
The exciting stuff, right? Okay, so, I put an article in the memo last week. So we have an opportunity in front of us with fairly low interest rates to issue a bond. So I'm going to talk about the new bond issue first so that you understand why we would do the refunding. So for about $385,000 increase in debt service, we can get $9.5 million. Over the last several years, when I got here and saw how bad some of the facilities were, I started working a little bit at a time, money into the budget for Dino to make upgrades. And it amounts to about $400,000 a year. So we could conceivably issue new bonds for $9.5 million and cut $385,000 from Dino's budget to pay for it. So that would be one of the first questions that the bond analyst would ask from Standard & Poor's, would be, how are you paying for this? And when they heard that, they would be happy with that. So why do a refunding, as you saw, if the potential savings is only $36,000? It's important to the S&P bond analysts that anytime you have a chance to pay for all the expenses and save some money, it just keeps everything as inexpensive as possible in all the bond issues. So they like to see that. That was one of the items they pointed out when they did their report on us last time, is that we had always taken advantage of every bond refunding that we could. So that's why the bond refunding is in there first. Those two things have to be 15 days apart. So that shouldn't be an issue. We can approve them at the same time, but they'll run the refunding first and then the new issue. So, I
John,
anticipate questions.
Yeah, who underwrites this for us? Is there an underwriting syndicate, or do we have one person do it?
So PFM acts as the consultant. And they charge a flat fee. And I honestly...
Do they just put it out to bid?
Yeah,
broker dealers
that's
out
all
there?
they do.
Okay.
They just put it out for bid, and they give them a certain discount, and they bid on bonds. The last time we did a bond issue, if I'm not mistaken, Carrie, I don't know if you remember this number, they had what they call that would amount to 6 overtimes. In other words, they would come down to the wire to end, and they were tied.
Oh, yeah.
So they kept redoing it until they finally got the lowest bid. So it works pretty effectively.
Yeah, it was Stiefel, I think, last time was who did it. So my question is, obviously, we have a working list somewhere of all CapEx projects that we've done and all CapEx projects that we need/would like to do, right, in order of importance. So if we're kind of budgeting in $400,000 a year to do that, and then now we get to say, all right, we get $9.5 million now, we can do 90 or 100% of this list. I guess my only concern is what happens in several years from now when we've essentially said, all right, well, we took all future years' budgeted funds that we're now using to just cover that debt service. Like, what happens if stuff comes up down the road from a budgeting standpoint?
Well, the nice thing about the way our debt's laid out with PFM is they're all done as wraparounds. So when you get through like the first 8 or 9 years of the bond issue, then everything is principal paid off for 2 or 3 years in a row, and that whole issue goes away. So it's a very neat little package, and actually Standard & Poor's commented in their last report on that they like that about the way we have our debt arranged.
So to kind of put this in perspective, is a ladder maybe is the easiest way to envision that, where every year we have some new, even though we're issuing a bunch of new longer-term debt, we have existing debt on the books that is going to kind of mature a little bit each year, and that's going to allow us to have some financial flexibility budgeting-wise, even if we do this right now.
Yep, that's a good way to put it.
What's our current yearly debt service?
It's about 2 point. So we're at
2.6? 2.489.
Thank you.
about 2.6, 2.615. It fluctuates a little bit, but that's about right. So we jump up to about 3 million.
3. And when
Or
we,
three, yeah, an additional 385 on top of that, so we get 3 million.
and when, is that a 10-year? Is that what I was reading?
They will, if you look at it, let's just go ahead and open it up and take a look at it. So that new issue will run for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
17.
15, 16 years from current date.
But again, they're staggering it. It's not
Yeah,
like
so
it's
they're-
one big payoff
Right.
at one point in time. It's a little bit.
You can see the payoffs in the last 2 years of that are 3 million. So there's nothing on the other bonds at that time.
I think something also worth noting, some numbers worth noting, is that our long-term debt in 18-19 was about 26 million. And if we do this, our long-term debt will be 68.5 million.
No, wait a minute.
No? Is that not accurate?
35.
No. So we were at about 26 million in 18-19, but remember, we had done a refunding in that year, and a new issue hit at the beginning of 19-20. So we added about 9.6 million to that.
So we were at 35.
So current year, yeah, we jumped.
I'm sorry, this will take us out to 45.
45.
Right.
45.
Yep, 45.1
My
million.
apologies, 45.
But if you take a look at the capacity, the way they analyze it, they're looking at your 3-year average of your revenue and multiply that by 2.25, and that puts us at $71.4 million. We're nowhere near going to be near that.
Is that the debt cap?
Yeah, that's the debt cap.
So we were at 26. Now we're at 35.
Going to go to 45.
And if we do this, we will be at $45
Right.
million
Yep.
of debt service. Okay.
Besides the pool, what is first on your list as far as CapEx that new money would be used?
The current CapEx is being used for all energy-related improvements.
That's covered, right? That was new money from the last issue.
Yeah, but we're not going to make it if we do the pool. We're going to run out before we get to the 300 and 400 hallway.
Yes.
So the new issue will help pay for that.
What would that rough estimate?
You know, at this point in time, it'd probably be about 3 million, 4 million.
Just for HVAC and the 300 and 400?
Well, it's HVAC, lighting, and building envelope are the big three.
3 to 4 million. So that would, if we think about the pool, let's just say 2 on a
So
very.
there's 2 parts to the pool.
Yeah, but we already have the money funded for the first part.
The HVAC,
But
right?
that's taking away from 300 and 400 to do that.
So the HVAC for the pool wasn't originally in that first.
No, we had put the pool on hold. We didn't put any plans in place till we figured out when we were going to do it.
Was the roof in place? Was the roof for the pool in place? And that was
We were going to have to do that no
Yeah,
matter what,
I
yeah.
thought that was the one thing that
Mhm.
was still in.
You're right.
John, in your best assessment, with another 9.5 of new money, would we be caught up from an infrastructure standpoint? Would there be anything that is outstanding that we're going to experience besides the uh-ohs, this broke, or like, does the gym floor do we need a new gym floor? Do we need all new floors? I mean, like, what, does the whole parking lot need repaved? I mean, I think the football field's good, new bleachers, new lights, the track, do we need a new track in the back?
Yes.
Like, well-
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is, will 9.5 get us everything that we should expect?
No. No.
What would be outstanding after the 9.5 is?
So without even renovating any classrooms, just doing the HVAC, doing nothing to the interior, like upgrades to labs and things like that, which are needed as well, our list is at about $13 million. That's not, and that doesn't count the HVAC and the lighting. And
What's
I
the
get-
highest on that list?
I get new
$13 million?
projects every day.
I'm sure you could. What's the highest on that list? Top
On
of
the-
mind.
Outside of the
13
HVAC?
Yeah, the 13 million that you,
Yeah, the biggest thing is the sidewalks around the school. We've put some of that, we've made headway on it, but we put one piece of it on hold out in the back here. This entryway to the cafeteria, where the buses drop off, is pretty bad.
John, classroom renovations, talk about those. Have those been done recently? We scale those up piece by piece. How many of those are outstanding still?
So all we're doing right now when we go through an area is we're doing the building envelope. So we're going in above the ceiling and we're sealing up all the holes that are in the walls and the interfaces if there's a roof or a second floor, like the 300 and 400 hallway. And then we'll rewrap the pipes in there, get new insulation, because when they put the insulation on the last time, they calculated it wrong. It was the wrong size insulation. So we constantly get condensation when it's humid out, and it ruins the ceiling tile. So we're fixing that, and we're putting new ceiling tile in and new lights, new LED lights. That's the big issue. Now, while we're in there, if we can get away with it, Dino has typically tried to have the custodians come through and paint the rooms as well. We've been doing the floors. We've been removing asbestos and replacing floors as well. We did that in the guidance area and the music area this last summer. And we still have, I think we did 200 hallway. There are a couple rooms we didn't finish that are on this end. And we have a few rooms in the 100 that we need to work on as well. We need new carpet in the LGI. We're holding off on that, talking to the Shaughnessy Foundation about helping with that. Those are the big items. As far as the classrooms themselves, though, the ones that concern me are the labs are aging. and they do need to be upgraded. The vents need to be improved, and the piping for gas and water, those need to be improved, in the electricity as well, for all the lab stations.
We've done in the past, this may go for now, but we've, when Bill was here, he was creating a list for us. He gave us a list for us. And so we get new money and stuff, here's our list, let's prioritize as a board. We've always kind of done that, we don't have to do it now, I'm just saying that's not a terrible idea. If we're getting new money, let's go make a list for us if you want to, or if the
Right.
board wants to do that, let's prioritize.
That's absolutely what would need to happen if you went forward.
I think we're always, when we do this, not that everybody can attend it, but the facilities meeting that we have scheduled on the 19th, that was like the main priority of having that walkthrough, so he can give us this synopsis and we could see like the sidewalk, stuff like that, and understand as a board like what our long-term and short-term major issues are, so that we can take that and maybe spit it into a list, and then we can all decide how to.
What we're going to try and do, if the daylight stays with us, is we wanted to go, I know you don't want to go, but we wanted to go on the roof at College Square so you could see the brand new roof, see what it looks like, so you can compare it to the roof that we have on this middle school, high school. There's going to be a big difference in what you see. And that was $700,000, that roof at College Square. That wasn't the entire building, that was a major section of it. And the whole entire roof at the middle school, high school needs to be replaced as well.
When you say it needs to be replaced, when I
So
think-
here's how they do an asphalt roof. A good company will come in with infrared cameras at night, and they will identify the approximate square footage where they're seeing heat that's coming out because there's water that's been trapped and baked and it's escaping at night when it cools off. They'll do this typically in the spring or the summer. And that will determine how much insulation they'll have to replace. So they peel off everything as they go, and they only do a few thousand square feet at a time. And that gives them a chance to get it under cover by that night. So they're doing a section at a time. They'll peel everything off, they'll strip out the insulation, put new insulation in, bolt it in, and start the layering of covering. And then seal that to the old section. Then rip that seal off and start again the next day. So they may only do a couple, like if they have a section that's got all the insulation has to be replaced, then they'll be doing a very small square footage. But if they see the next section doesn't have a lot of insulation, they'll do a bigger section of it. So it might be 3,000 square feet one day, it might be 1,000 the next day, it might be 5,000, and they just progress. That's exactly what they did at College Square.
And if College Square, we all know the size of College Square was 700,000.
That was $700,000 for about 30,000 square feet, about 25 to 30,000 square feet.
So it
We have
wasn't,
a
it wasn't,
very
it wasn't the whole building.
long building.
Mhm.
We talking 4 or 5 million bucks?
We have the numbers. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking this one is a $2 million range for the whole roof.
Is that on top of the 400 too?
Yeah, that one's in pretty good shape. We can do that one last. The only piece that isn't is the one that's close to it is above the pole. It's a separate roof though, but the 400 hallway isn't too bad. We can wait to do that one a couple years.
I feel like you guys have been doing this for a while, but I feel like we're just getting started.
Well, only because every day something new comes up. It's very frustrating. It's like you hit one thing down and 2 more pop up.
We wanted to do it like Shawshank Redemption on the roof, just tar it.
But if you don't learn anything from this, this is why it's so important to put a preventive maintenance program in place and do it and stay with it. And we're not there yet. I mean, I explain this to the teachers every year, and I know not everybody listens. They're excited about getting in and getting their rooms ready. But we have 2 maintenance people that cover 400,000 square feet. The international average is 60,000 square feet per maintenance person. So we are severely understaffed with maintenance. So they can't even get to do preventive maintenance because they're being called to fix other problems throughout the day. It's very frustrating.
Now, you make a good point. If we get new money and we start doing some additional work, and we're taking 400,000 from Dino's budget, but we still need to put in a PM program, and we don't want to wait because we want to make this last. We don't want to see issues. So instead of, we might have to spend additional money for staff sooner than later than anything.
I've had one maintenance position in the budget for the last 3 years at the highest rate I could put in there. I've never been able to fill it because other problems crop up throughout the year and I don't get to fill the position. But it's there, it's in the budget. If we go forward with the pool, we will have to fill that position.
All right.
So do you have any questions, anybody, on this bond issue stuff?
I'm just, personally, I'm just concerned. I mean, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. We need it, but that, it's scary to me, just from my own personal sense, because if I would do that in my own home in some capacity, which we do, we get a mortgage, but it's $45 million debt on a $30 million budget. It's scary. And it's the taxpayers that are ultimately on the hook. So if we do this and the economy tanks in 5 years, or the shell cracker plant blows up and there's no more jobs or something, I mean, it's scary. It's just scary thinking about it.
It is not risk-free, but if you look at the hand that we're dealt now, you really can't wait, because those costs keep escalating. You are not going to be able to get $9.5 million for $385,000 a year if the economy picks up. We're fortunate to see interest rates this low. This is the lowest we've seen. And that may continue through August and beyond. So we've got time. Okay.
1 to 4 and 5, the copier lease
Scott,
agreement.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. On the reissue,
The refunding.
the refunding, can you just talk to me for
Sure.
a minute on that?
So
What's left, what we would be doing to it, what does that
So
do?
bonds aren't callable for 5 years. So it's our 2014 bonds that are callable. So what PFM does for us is they go in and they look at those bonds and they look at what bonds could they call and replace at a lower interest rate, how much could we save? And does that savings pay for all the costs that you have when you do a reissue? Because there's going to be an S&P rating that you have to pay for, there's going to be bond counsel costs, there's going to be PFM's costs, there's going to be bond insurance, all that stuff. But yeah, we do. We pay for all that cost, plus we save $36,000 is their estimate. They think they can beat that, but they don't. But they're conservative in their estimate. So
It
any
won't
chance we
extend-
can, we refund. We do refinancing.
It won't extend the maturity or anything like that.
It's not lengthening the term, it's not doing anything like that, we're just
Taking them out, refinancing.
lowering the rate.
So
That seems pretty-
it could be the lesson to learn, though, is whether we have the existing 35 million or the additional 10, which gives us 45, it's that over the last 25 years, there hasn't been a maintenance program.
Right.
So no matter what we do moving forward, it's very important that we maintain what we have
Exactly.
and move forward with a maintenance program. I think that's the lesson not to be forgotten.
All right. 1 to 4 and 5, approve the copier lease agreement and approve the copier maintenance agreement.
So we go 4, 5, and 6. 6 is
4,
related
5,
to that.
and 6, approve
Yeah.
paper cut ACDI permission to quote.
So we've had a problem with copiers. So long ago, somebody thought it was a good idea to take out a lease on used copiers. I get to pay for it. Actually, it's all the administrative support staff in the buildings, they're paying for it. Because they are pulling their hair out, running around trying to fix copy machines. So what they have to go through is, the copier's broken, they run to it, and they go through this sequence of events to try things that they do to the copier to try and get it up and running. And if that doesn't work, they plead with Xerox to send somebody out, and they schedule somebody and send them out, but they might not get there that day. It might not be till the next day. And then the next machine breaks, and they're doing this all the time. So much so that we're seeing an increase in overtime costs, because those people, that would be Tracy, Nadine, and Sally, can't get their jobs done during normal time because they're spending most of their time on these copiers. Jim Shea has been tracking the alarms that we get from the copiers, just unbelievable. They will fill probably 50 to 100 alarms a day from the various copiers coming into his email system. So not a good idea to lease used copiers and run them through volume that's beyond their volume capability. So not only are they old, they're the wrong size. So it's not good.
They're too small?
Yeah. So last year, I got some information from our friends at Kyocera, who had replaced some machines over here. And they put a plan together to change out 6 machines at the various buildings to get everybody what they needed. So in order to fix this problem, I knew our costs were going to go up. I assumed that I would fix it at the beginning of the year, but we couldn't get it done that quickly. But at the beginning of the year, our increase in cost would have been about $36,000, and I put that in the budget through the various buildings. Right now, if we pull the trigger on it, our costs go up by only $29,000. The good news is, after a year, they should drop by $24,000 when we get rid of the other copiers.
What's that based on?
That's based on having yet to pay off the lease on the old copiers. We've got 1 year left on them. But I think I can speak for the admin support staff that if I let this go another year, I won't want to show my face. It's bad.
So it's a net 5,000 more over 2 years.
Who's Kyocera is the manufacturer, who's the company?
So their distributor is Access Consulting, Access Business Consulting.
Are they local?
Pittsburgh area. But yeah, they do have schools in the area, other schools, and Gateway Rehab, I think they do. This Kyocera is a CoStar's contract, so we don't have to bid it. But just for comparison, I sent an email with the generic specifications to Xerox to see what they would come back with for replacing the machines with new machines at higher ratings. So we'll see if they get back to me.
Would you want to throw one more in there? The only reason I asked is I started out copiers right out of college. Very exciting job. But I still have contacts with a Ricoh manufacturer. I think they were actually bought by Xerox some time ago, but they still sell Ricoh's great copiers. I still have contacts there. I can see if we can just get some more bids if you want. If not, I don't want to bog it down and slow it down.
It'd be good for comparison. I don't mind.
We'll reach out to someone and get them in contact.
Yeah, all I'll do is I'll just forward them a copy of the generic spec for 6 machines, and they can just tell me. I keep everything separate. I keep the lease separate from the maintenance cost. Because if you've sold these before, you know what happens with that. That's where they make their money, by mixing the two together.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we want to compare apples to apples, so that's how we'll do it. So by the way, the third item on there, PaperCut, is the software system that will allow us to, what's happening right now, because we haven't gotten PaperCut completely into the system and working correctly, is that we'll eventually someone will be able to print to the copier queue, take their fob and go to any copier and print from that copier. What's happening now is they can only go to one copier queue. Then they go there, find out everybody's there, go back and print to a different machine, go there and pick it up, and it's being printed twice and they're throwing it out. So there's a lot of waste in the current system. So the paper cut software will allow us to eliminate that waste and hold it in one queue, and it just goes wherever you click your fob, it'll go to that printer and allow them to print. And it'll also allow us to see who's using how much, so that we can figure out, okay, are people using the apps, or are they still stuck in hard copy stuff, and why is it hard copy stuff? That'll be the target for the STAP kids to go talk to those teachers and find out if there's a way that we could use less paper. So that's my unhidden agenda.
I think you just.
I know who you are, I'm coming to get you.
All right, item 7, authorized phase 1 of the pool renovation.
Yeah, so we, you all knew that we were having some meetings the last couple weeks. And just an amazing group of people all together in one room, and some on conference call. Some pretty impressive people that came together, and within a very short time period, we have a mini feasibility study that has laid out what the approximate cost is going to be to renovate the building portion first of the pool, and then the pool itself. The first meeting was to try and figure out if it was possible to do the building and the pool in the same year. And the answer is unequivocally no, not unless you want to give up the entire swim season. So the only way to save both swim seasons is to do the building first. So we'll take it from March to November, and we might get done before November, but that's a worst case scenario. That's got some slack built into it. And that'll do the inside, the building. That'll be the roof, the HVAC, the ceiling, the lighting, and probably some miscellaneous stuff on where the spectators sit. We gotta fix some things there. In the second year, we'll do March to November again, and it'll be strictly the pool. And we've got Tower Engineering found an individual of all places in Wisconsin, a company called WTI, Water Technologies Incorporated. And their mechanical engineer is able to answer every question that we ask without looking anything up. Bless you. So he's been fantastic. His recommendation is to widen the pool by 2 feet, pick up 1 foot on each side of the pool, so the people in the outside lanes aren't slapping their arms into the walls. It's a little too close. And that's something that we'd have to do anyway to get the forms in, whether it be concrete or stainless steel. So, do we know which type of pool yet? No, we have ballpark estimates of the 3 types of pools. And we're going to be refining that while we're doing the inside of the building. Right now, what I'm saying is very, very conservative, that you're going to approve us going forward not to exceed $3 million. I think the number will actually be more like, for just the inside of the building, about $2 million. But the bottleneck for us is core borings. So when you approve that, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend about $8,200 on core borings at select areas around the pool. And everybody should remember why I'm doing that. But we have to do it to make sure that we don't have a sinkhole anywhere.
So to some
Enough
extent,
said.
John, does this, I don't want to use the word blank check because it sounds so awful, but I mean, if you do, phase 1 just being not the actual infrastructure of the pool, just everything around it, right? The walls and ceiling and everything else that you were talking about. If you've done that, we're going to do the pool at that point, right? Because we're,
Right.
the pieces aside from the physical pool, right, are designed to be used in an auditorium. So if we build it that way, it's
Sure.
to go forward with a pool and not really something else.
So you need to know the worst case scenario for
Right.
the pool itself, which is about $2 million. Those
Okay.
are the numbers that we're seeing.
Phase 1, 2 million.
Phase 2, $2
That's,
million.
Phase 2.
that's the pool, the other one is 3.
But that's why the core borings are so important as well. Because if we see something we don't like when we do those, we're stopping and regrouping and looking at this again to see what we have to do to fix it.
What's the phase one cost then again, John? What's the phase one cost?
So we're thinking it's gonna be more like 2 million. I'm gonna ask you to approve not to exceed 3, just in case we run into a problem.
From next week, phase one.
Mhm.
Phase
Excuse
two
me,
is,
did you say
2 million.
3?
so what's the total, both phases?
Not to exceed.
So it could be, we're guessing it's gonna be about 4, but I'm gonna ask you to approve 3 and 2, just in case.
Total $4 million.
Yep.
$4 million.
John, this is, the phase 2 is with the new idea we had of going with the gunite, correct? Is this
No,
something
I'm
different?
giving you the worst case scenario there. Probably the gunite pool, it would be more at the lower end of that, probably be about 1.2 million for the pool itself. The 2 million is, and it depends what you decide to cover the gunite pool with. We've not even made that decision. So you can just spray a sealer on it and you're done at 1.2 million. If you go with ceramic tile, which will have a long life, it's probably more like 1.6 million. And the difference between that and the Merthyr pool is what's coming in at the highest, about 2 million. There's a hybrid in between. There's a combination of concrete and stainless. That would be right in the middle of those two, we believe.
But the Merthyr pool has the best warranty, right?
We actually, we haven't tested it yet, but they're telling us that the hybrid pool has a 20-year warranty as well. So, whereas the Merthyr pool, you have to do all the preventive maintenance on the pool correctly when you get to year 10, when the warranty runs out, and if you have done it correctly, they award you another 10 years. Whereas the hybrid pool is more like 20 years, there you go, we're done.
I know we have some pool representation. Any thoughts, comments?
We have a question, actually.
Oh.
I have a question. So if this gets approved, there was a presentation on the other possible uses of the pool area or the addition. Where does that leave? Is that canceled out if the pool's
Like
approved?
the steam center?
The steam center, yeah.
We keep
Certainly couldn't go where the pool is.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, if there was 2 other locations that he presented, is that still going to be considered, or
That's up to
is the budget?
That was up to the board. Those are ideas that we gave them.
Mhm.
We're going forward with the capital plan,
Mhm.
and that's what we'll be sharing with them. And if they say, hey, what could we do to get more improvement in the STEAM
Mhm.
curriculum? Yeah, I have an option that
Mhm.
would involve an addition to the existing industrial arts building behind it.
Mhm.
So that's a possibility.
Doesn't mean it's going away, it just means, like Dr. Rose said,
Can't go where the pool.
not going where the pool is.
So
We've already
last question-
spoken.
Okay.
No, we actually, I mean, all 3 of them, will work wonderfully. Yeah, it's a big dollar amount, especially when we add the scope of all of the facilities, but it makes sense from the long-term perspective, and Coach is willing to, it'd be nice to have a new pool, next year, but understanding what's, going on and what's being planned, especially from a maintenance and a renovation perspective from many years of neglect, you guys are in a great situation to try to bring that back at ground zero from a big solid baseline, put a preventive maintenance program into place, and then it's no longer, really an issue. One of the things that we have to consider, though, is that this can't be thought of as a swimming pool where the high school swim team swims. It's got to be considered a community asset, a community pool that just so happens to have a high school swim team competing inside it. So, years ago, I don't know, it predates me, but for many of you that, graduated from Beaver, I mean, back then, probably had a very solid swimming program, complete with community involvement. where it had swim lessons on a regular basis, where it had club swimming, where it had diving, where it, it was being utilized by the track team and the cross-country team, and which is currently being done right now. In fact, Gallagher, he loves, receiving 70% of our swimmers on the track team, at the end of season. So he says, nothing like well-conditioned, athletes. So it can't be considered just a high school swimming pool. If that's the case, it makes no financial sense. But what we put together years ago, this is 3.5, almost 4 years in the running that we've been involved with this. We put together a business plan, which I have, copies of that if anybody would like to see that. In terms of what does it mean, I'll get you one, Jared, I have it with me. What does it mean from a community perspective in terms of the special, needs kids that are able to swim, they're able to compete. They can't do that in football. They can't do that really track. This is something that everybody can enjoy and does. We've had students with Down syndrome competing at the high school level. We've had kids with high functioning autism on the spectrum. And it just makes sense from a community perspective to consider it as such, that it is a community asset. So it's the...
I don't want to interrupt, but if there was a sinkhole, like after we find this
We
out.
put a hot tub in it, Wendy.
No,
That's
but
exactly what we do.
But would those children then be able to train at the Y? The children with
No,
special
they won't
needs
let
kids?
it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. It's a no-go.
Yeah.
You mean
But-
to run a swim program there?
No, for the special needs students, for Special Olympics.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I'm
for the
asking
special needs kids, absolutely. They do that all over the place, but they don't have a place to call home, if you will. We've already talked to, the Special Olympics for Beaver County, and they're all over us like a bad rash. They're like, give us a home.
There just aren't a lot of pools in our area too. We're one of 2 6-lane competitive high school pools in the entire county.
It's because of the expense.
It is.
So it's New Brighton, Riverside.
So New Brighton can't even dive because they're
No,
too shallow. Riverside's a 4-lane pool. Hopewell is a 5-lane pool.
You can only use 4, right?
You can only use 4 for competition, which would put us at a big disadvantage with the size of our team. If we went down to a 4-lane pool, I would have to bench half my team for the boys every single meet. Additionally, then Blackhawk's the only other competitive 6-lane pool in our county right now. So it's really us and Blackhawk, and
We're better than that.
yeah, our boys definitely.
No, I'm just saying our district is better.
Well, yes, absolutely.
So if the district if the pool stopped existing, what would be would we have to send our kids to a different pool, or does the program die altogether, or what happens if the pool?
It'd be tough because right now, Central Valley uses our pool. Central Valley has a pretty good competitive team, but they rent our pool from us. So we're kind of working in conjunction with them as well. I don't know what the rental fees are, but that's certainly something that, the board and the business manager should consider. In terms of, we're saving them money, they're using our diving board, so.
Are we hosting tournaments and stuff like that, or we can be like the main?
We could in the future, but in our current facility, I'd be reluctant. I'll be honest, I've never seen I swam competitively for almost 20 years, and I never saw flat blocks until I came here. It's just a fact, our blocks haven't been updated since the pool was built.
They're original, yeah.
They're original to the facility, which, is now going 50 years.
What's the block typically?
What's your standard?
But Jared,
Yeah, there's a slightly more
Jared,
block, so
other
you can get
schools
a
that don't have
track side,
pools,
there's even more
they go to.
technology that's gone into them with wedges and
We
hand
researched
swim.
that 4 years ago.
There's also, efficiencies too with updating it. Right now, again, we're operating, I guess it's safe to say, we're operating at a 50-year-old efficiency level. There's pumps, there's filters, there's, piping, there's, so many things
Electrical
involved.
costs would
Oh,
go
electrical
down.
would go. Gas would gonna be heat, there's covers that we can use, so, and there's also the, stuff that, as a booster organization, we've committed to continue in terms of maintaining and
We're
you know,
gonna hold you.
improving.
Is there bandwidth with the schedule of open pool availability to bring another school in, to rent it?
We're doing that right now with
To
Central
gain more
Valley.
revenue? I'm saying outside of Central Valley. Is there more bandwidth with the schedule?
So
Pool
there's a lot of
availability schedule.
there's a lot of options there. So one, you have the high school season runs from mid-November through mid-March at latest if you have state qualifiers. So you have 8 months out of the year that we can program the pool with club swimming, private, swim lessons, open swims, lots of different options there. In addition, I mean, we could probably I think we could bring in one more team, either mornings or, find something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like yet. That would have to be a decision between, talking between those organizations, making something work, but we
Would
have time.
if we really maximize this pool use, let's say after the fact, we spend $4 million, and we're pushing, we got boosters, business manager, we're pushing to get that thing used, community asset. Are we gonna just beat the crap out of this updated pool to a point where we're not gonna see 20 years out of it? Or would we be doing ourselves a disservice to gain revenue in opposite of seeing it longer life? Because in my opinion, if there's a revenue opportunity available or additional revenue streams, then let's find how that can work and let's bring those people in. But now we got just continuous use, right? So I'm just wondering if that's even smart. Doesn't have to be discussed right now. I don't know.
I'm concerned about the opposite of it being underutilized.
Underutilized.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's worse for it to sit there and not.
It is worse for it to sit because, I mean,
Well,
it
it's not.
provides wear and tear on the equipment, just
Yeah.
letting it sit, kind of like an automobile. The seals wear out, oil starts leaking. Gotta keep it used.
One last thing I will say, so one person mentioned, what are our options if we don't fix the pool and do those updates? There really aren't that many. I mean, I know for a fact that the Blackhawk pool is fully programmed to their capacity. They can't accept any additional teams. Riverside's in the same boat. I work with one of the parents for that team. Hopewell, same thing. They have a 4-lane, 5-lane pool. They've outgrown, they're at capacity. They can't accept more teams. You go outside of our area, okay, then you're talking, districts that are now half an hour away or more to be able to get any pool time, and there's no guarantee that you're getting pool time at those facilities, and then we're paying rent on facilities as well. So the fact that there are so few pools in our area, you already have, Beaver Falls has been renting the Sunrise pool, I think, for several years.
Rochester closed some pool as well.
Is it
Rochester covered
Yeah.
up their pool.
Yep, Rochester's pool closed years ago. Freedom's pool is empty at the moment. Central Valley doesn't have a pool. There's just not a whole lot of bandwidth for aquatic athletics, with our area.
And this is Whitfield, so if hypothetically, if we close the pool, it's not like the kids can scatter to different programs, right?
No, it's all
You have to
based.
be within the district and you have to have a team that competes.
Yep.
All right, number 8, approve Apple iPad taxable interest rate lease.
Before I start, I'm going to apologize for this.
How long you been waiting to do that, John?
Oh, for about an hour. Sorry, I got one of these stupid boots on my foot.
Hey, you better explain what's happening.
I've got one of those giant Frankenstein boots on because I broke a metatarsal, and it's just annoying. It squeezes it all day, and I can't stand it anymore. Okay, Apple iPad. Okay, so let's back up. On the current iPad lease to own, we pay about $131,000 a year on that lease. That's in the budget. So with that in mind, we also earmarked $500,000 of the assigned fund balance to iPad replacement. So we had planned for this to hit in July of 2021, but Jim Shea came to me and made a very logical argument that Carrie can speak to for doing this early. There's educational reasons that I think, Carrie, all I wanted to hear from you is that, yes, that's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah. So I just tried to move it into current year. So when you have something in assigned fund balance, you'll hear the state talk about a balanced budget. It's not revenue minus expenditures equals 0. It's fund balance plus revenues minus expenditures is greater than or equal to 0. So they include the fund balance in that. So if you're just looking at revenue expenditures and say, my God, John, why are you going negative by $500,000? Because they expect us to over time. We have $2.6 million of assigned fund balance that they expect us to eventually use. So I would be going, adding an expenditure for $500,000 in 1920 that we didn't put in the budget. So to kind of decrease the impact on fund balance, I asked Dino to take a look at where he was on his $400,000. He spent about 2 of it and thinks he can hold back on $200,000. The problem is there are other people that wanted us to do stuff, and now we're saying we're going to hold off on that because we might be doing this $9.5 million. So we're going to delay the other $200,000 this year so that we can accommodate Jim and spend $500,000. His grand total spend on everything related to the iPads, and this includes the cases that result in warranties, warranty insurance on the things, turns out to be about $836,000. So follow me on this. We're going to pay down $500,000 this year, get the iPads, and the balance of that is going to roll into a 3-year lease. That is going to be at $116,000, which is below the $131,000 we already have in the budget. So we're good. I'm just pulling the trigger early on the $500,000 that we were going to spend anyway. Did everybody follow me on that?
It's actually safe.
Well, I mean, we got to fork over $500,000.
Wow. Annual savings, not upfront.
Are more iPads gonna be purchased than, I ran into an issue this year, there wasn't any replacement iPads available.
Yeah, Jim, well.
For 6 weeks, my son didn't have
Sure.
an iPad.
We had, he keeps some back, but this
they're
year
used
he
for
had a
testing?
rush on new people coming to the school and stuff, and he did call me in a panic at one point throughout the year, and we already pulled the trigger on, we ordered about 10 to 20 of those replacements.
So, yes, generally
yeah.
speaking, there are replacements. I'm surprised to hear that your son had to go for 6 weeks without an iPad. So, yes, generally there are additional ones here for those circumstances. And we use a service where we can send an iPad back and they send us a new one at the same time. So I'm not sure what happened in that case.
He just said there weren't enough, like, they do some kind of testing, and so he had to hold them here because kids would leave them at home instead of bringing their iPads, thinking they'll get out of the test.
I'm not familiar with that. I do know that he called me a couple times for replacements. And, I mean, he had the money in the budget to order them. It's just that he was taken by surprise at how quickly he ran out.
Is what we're doing standard? We did it 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Well, it has,
It's better.
it's grown a little bit, yeah.
I'm sure, well, the technology continues to improve and
Yeah.
different versions of
So
the actual hardware and software.
we do this about every 3 years.
We spend a chunk of money about every 3 years plus the annual leasing.
Right.
All right, let's do 9 through 14. Board Policy 622 GASB Statement 34, this is the second time through. Revised Board Policy 138, second time through. Adopt new Board Policy 142, second time through. Retire Board Policy number 120, this will be the first. Adopt revised Board Policy number 112, this will be the first. And adopt revised Board Policy 123.1, also first.
So our second readings, we have gone over these quite a bit. So unless there are specific questions, just let me say that 622 deals with finances, and it keeps us in line with the way we are supposed to be budgeting and using our money. Policy 142 is related to migrant students. Our major change was to add some definitions. Policy 138 was about our limited English proficiency program, language instruction education program for English language learners is the technical term. And basically this keeps us in line with doing the right thing for kids who come here and their first language isn't English. Let me just see which policy that takes me to. That takes me to policy 120. 120, we're looking to retire a policy that is maybe 4 or 5 sentences long. It's called Human Development Program. It is vague and unusual in its wording, and we've been told that retiring this particular policy will help limit our liability in different areas. Go ahead.
How so?
Well, the second sentence of this deals with, it says, the primary purpose of human development instruction is to promote more wholesome family and interpersonal relationships and to develop healthy habits and moral values. I think the question is in definition.
I was just going to say define each of those.
Defining wholesome family, and who do you want to define that? Interpersonal relationships and what would be acceptable, and then you move on to moral values, and is that something that you want necessarily the school to teach your children, or do you believe that that's something that might want to have happen at home? And so the recommendation is to retire this policy, and if the board feels that another policy should be in its place, then we can certainly work on language that will be less objectionable, or maybe less vague in what we're seeking. So again, this is actually, today isn't the first reading. Next Monday will be the first reading. You have a long way to go on this before you actually decide, yes, we want to retire this, or no, we actually want to sit down and work on better language. Okay, then policy 112. 112 is for guidance counseling, and it talks about the purpose of a guidance counseling program, helping students with intellectual, emotional, and social and physical needs, aiding students when they're making vocational and academic planning, identifying career options. Next month, we'll actually be looking at the 339 plan from the state, which is a well-articulated curriculum that will go all the way through the school, that kind of introduces vocation information from kindergarten all the way up. And the sixth purpose of this is to help students learn to make their own decisions and solve problems independently. It talks about the authority to do so, and the only major change that, or I suppose it's not even major, the only change that I felt was warranted was in the guidelines number 7, to take out the word equally and put in equitably. That the services of the guidance department will be available equitably to all students, not equally.
Suggestion.
Please.
That we're not called guidance counselors anymore. The program's called school counselors.
Okay. So
They changed, a while ago.
So you prefer, instead of guidance counseling, you would prefer school counseling? I don't know that there's any reason to object to that language. I'll make that change, and if anybody else has changes to that one, be happy to talk to you about it. The last policy is 123.1, and this one is called concussion management. Another word for concussion is traumatic brain injury. I oftentimes prefer to use that because it is so serious. So this policy talks about how we are going to handle things before an athlete actually engages in any athletic event, meaning they're going to do the baseline testing. What's going to happen if we suspect that a student athlete has a concussion, who's qualified to say that a student athlete can come back, and what the penalties are for a coach who puts a kid back into play before they are released. That penalty section is the first time the coach would be suspended from coaching any athletic activity for the remainder of that season, and a second violation would be permanent suspension from coaching any athletic activity. You make a mistake once, you may not have fully understood what you were doing. If you do the same thing again, you shouldn't be a coach here. And that's it for policies. Questions or concerns?
Is this very specific to just the athletic
Yeah, this is
aspect of concussion protocols? Because I've seen with my son's hockey team a couple kids that got concussions and they've missed a lot of school. So I don't know, I'm sure we have medical policies or some sort of standards that allow us to work with the kids, but does the educational aspect of the concussion?
There actually is a line in here that talks about that, that will develop the administrative regulations related to school. But we do have an administrative regulation, an AR, that outlines what will happen at the school.
All right, number 15, approved cyber services agreement, program of studies.
We purchase our cyber program through a consortium with Seneca Valley. And this is the renewal of that service agreement. The only thing that we changed in this was, instead of having our termination date be in, I think it was March or April, our solicitor said, you might want that to be, in July, after you've made some decisions about staffing and the like, and she's absolutely right. They made the change for us. Other than that, this is status quo.
Is this their program that they've developed, or are they getting licensing and just operating it, and we're jumping on board?
Yeah, we jump on board. The product is called Edgenuity. So Edgenuity has, they create the program, they make sure it aligns with state standards, and Seneca Valley received special dispensation to kind of farm out the licenses that they have. Seneca Valley will also give us a teacher of record if we need it. Generally speaking, let me not say generally, in all cases currently, our teachers are the teacher of record. We haven't had a situation yet where a student wanted to take a class and we didn't have a teacher who was willing or didn't have the right certification to teach it.
Saves us a bunch of money.
It does, yeah, it's much less expensive for us to do it ourselves.
Where does this program, you in our packet of information, you sent some information over regarding charter schools and how many students are attending. Is our attendance into this program, whatever that number is, was that in there?
No.
So that's something totally different.
Yes.
And is that something we pay for, or is it something?
Yeah, so the students who do our cyber program do it one of two ways. Either they're a cyber student and they come to school every day and they're in the cyber room up there that we usually have our executive session meetings in, and there is a teacher in the room, or I should say a proctor in the room, because our teachers are the teacher of record, but there's a proctor working with them all day. Or a student can choose to do our cyber program from home, in which case they're supplying their own equipment and the internet, and they're taking our courses, and then our teachers will log on, same idea, and correct their work. So those students who choose to come to our cyber program, whether they come here or they do it from home, are a significant savings than if that same student decided that they would go to a cyber school. And there are probably 5 cyber schools where we have students that do go.
All right, number 16, approve an RFP for legal services. So, I guess it was brought up either at finance or employee relations to review all contracts to make sure that they're cost effective and what the district wants to do. And the question is whether or not you want to do an RFP or just invite whoever would like to submit for interviews. Thoughts, questions?
I had a thought on the expectations. What was that document called? Recommendations for services?
Either the RFP, where you're seeking proposals, or are you talking about
Sorry.
are you talking about the expectations that we have for our current solicitor? I'm not sure which one you're wanting.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm confusing you. It would have been the request for proposals.
Okay.
I think I can talk about this offline, not to slow us down. This isn't anything that's... But I did want to ask a couple questions on it.
Sure, go ahead. I mean, this is the forum.
So they should have, this is, following areas of public school demonstrated experience in most, if not all, provide ongoing legal services in the capacity of solicitor to at least 3 other Pennsylvania school districts. Am I reading that to say ongoing, that they should be a solicitor for 3 other districts at the same time? I'm on bullet, it'd be 2.5, the last bullet.
That's correct. That's the way that reads.
That's what we want.
We want someone who has a firm or a person who has a breadth of experience.
Agreed.
So that when we're asking questions, we're not necessarily paying for the research time because it's outside the scope of their normal duties. It's thought that if they were providing services to at least 3 other school districts, and particularly school districts in Pennsylvania, that they would have that knowledge.
Yeah, but that really could limit who responds. Because there could be a firm, you name the amount of people, and they might not be doing 3. Now, combined experience, they could have tens and tens and tens of years of experience, decades of experience between whatever the amount of people. But I don't know. I'd like to further discuss that bullet point, but I think it creates a gap and it pushes potential people out from being able to respond.
I think you're right, and I think 2.5, just as a point of reference, it says they should have demonstrable experience in most, if not all, of the following areas, and that is one of them. So it's possible they would only have experience with 1 other school district or 2 other school districts. Does that disqualify them from submitting a proposal? No. And it also wouldn't disqualify you from selecting them. It's simply one area that you can say this group this firm or person has more experience than this one. Do we value that? I don't know.
I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Sure.
I think we are.
Okay.
The way I'm reading this is ongoing legal services. So I could be 100 years old and I could have been a solicitor for 32 different school districts in my tenure.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what this is saying. This is saying is that at the time of potential employment, the solicitor needs to be a solicitor in another capacity for 3 other districts.
Or someone in their firm.
Or someone in their firm.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
So that's what I'm saying.
You are reading it correctly.
Okay.
That is what is written there.
So I'd like for us to have maybe a conversation on how to. change that or take that to,
I worked for a municipal attorney for quite some time, and that's very common.
Yeah.
It is not, they work for several different school districts and boroughs at the same time.
well, and you're most likely right. I have no
No, I
reason to
am
question.
right.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if we would be limiting.
Yeah, I think that is the
potential
point.
people. That is-
That's the point.
Yeah.
We
You're
want someone
right,
with
you're
the most
creating a gap,
experience.
you're trying to
Offer
figure out what
resources.
separates the people who have applied.
Yes.
And then you determine it, hopefully in advance, which one of those things you value over others. You might determine that you don't value that as much as their ability to talk about school construction projects or real estate assessment appeals.
Them from applying.
Yeah.
It's not saying you have to,
It's saying most.
you know, the sentence above all those bullets.
All right, that's
Did you
fine.
did you have other concerns in this?
That's a question for later. Don't worry about that one. I think I had one more.
Scott, the question to the board for us to discuss right now is, do we want to move forward with this RFP, or do we want to scrap this and make, I guess, personal recommendations of other firms besides Janet's, obviously, who would be one of them, that we would want to invite to interview? Is that correct? Is that what we're trying to just figure out tonight?
We're not figuring out anything tonight. We're having a discussion on if.
I'm not saying we're voting, I'm saying, but the idea is RFP or no RFP.
Yes.
And that's what we'll vote on next week, to do the RFP or to either move forward without an RFP or do nothing. Those are our three options, right? RFP, move forward, no RFP, move forward, do nothing, keep Wasteburg Park as is, and
I want to say I'm very uncomfortable with this whole concept of personal recommendations. I don't feel like that's how we should be doing this or approaching it. I feel like we should put it out to whoever would like to apply and look at it without any sort of bias or.
I think an RFP also just
Oh,
gives us a
I'm
nice.
for the
oh,
RFP.
okay.
I said,
Okay, yeah, I was
no,
gonna say
the-
like
like
snapshot
saying
of-
either to do an RFP or personal recommendations.
Oh,
I'd
yeah,
rather
no.
have the RFP.
Put it, yeah. I agree.
My other question was, in the disciplinary action, respondent shall provide a statement, no attorney affiliated with the respondent has, within 5 years from the date of submission, been disciplined by the grievance committees of the state or federal bar. Is that standard, 5 years?
Can you tell me what number you're on?
Number 10? It seems like a short window. I don't know if I'd want someone representing us if 5 years ago they were dinged with an ethics complaint.
Kerry, you started with the one I
And you
gave you
really
from
limit
Hasbro,
the
right?
field.
This came from Hasbro.
Touche.
This one I gave you? Okay. So this came from the trade association for the school business officials.
Okay, so
It's kind of been vetted.
industry norm. All right, well, that's it. That's all the questions I had on that.
all right, 17, approve the cost for a police officer to attend the work and voting sessions of the board. This was a discussion at the last.
Right, yeah, the board asked that I find out how much it would cost to have a Beaver police officer come to our meetings, and that answer is $75 an hour. And we're looking at a minimum of 2 hours for a work session and a minimum of 2 hours for our voting session.
2.
I think we better.
Avoid tonight's one.
All right, here we go.
Is that because I'm here?
Item,
Yeah, I can step out. I don't have to come back.
No, it's not.
item C, personnel, we're gonna do all
It's
four
not.
together.
You're
It's
not the
all coaches.
Wait, back up.
Yeah,
Are we gonna approve that then? This approve or disapprove? Okay.
Yeah, this is to just either do it or not.
Okay.
And if we wanna take this off, we can also make a motion to table and.
So what will the motion look like next week? Because this is approve
Motion.
the cost.
Carrie.
The motions are always put in the affirmative, so you would be asked to approve the cost of $75 per hour, for the work session and for the voting session.
Thusly approving the officer, right? Not just the cost,
Right.
but.
This
the
is
officer.
correct. This is correct. Installing an officer at a cost of $75 from Beaver Borough, yes, we would spell all of that out.
Because we're sure of the price.
We are sure of the price.
Well, Carrie, I mean, and this is a different perspective, but I wonder, like, and you've talked to Chief Maglar, obviously. I mean, those officers are patrolling on a nightly basis already. I know sometimes, and I don't know if they get paid, sometimes like they'll walk into a basketball game and hang out at the basketball game for 45 minutes or whatever, then go back out and patrol again. Is it possible to ask the borough if that could be a no-cost thing, where maybe they have an officer stop by at our monthly meetings, and whether they stay for the full time or if they come for 45 minutes as just part of their nightly patrol, would that be an option to propose to the borough, opposed to us paying them that flat fee?
Well, I think what you're suggesting now is absolutely something that I can ask about, but it's an entirely different question
Yeah.
than what the board wanted me to find out last month.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have someone come and we're going to require that they are here for the duration of our meetings, that's going to be $75 an hour, and they're committed to providing that. The reasoning that Director Baradelli brought up was safety. If we are satisfied that someone who's on patrol, stopping in from anywhere between 5 minutes and 4 hours,
3 days.
would be okay, then certainly that's something that I can ask about, but that doesn't seem to necessarily get to the heart of what you were suggesting.
I mean, no. And there's no guarantees. So.
Is it possible for you to have
So
that
listen, so I think what
conversation between now and next week, just so we know before we vote?
Of course.
I would suggest, and maybe it'll be too late because this will go public here in 48 hours, that we don't go back to the chief and ask him that question until after we vote. If this even makes it to the agenda for next week, because if it gets tabled, then I would go back to him and say, hey, it got tabled, but would you, by the way, happen to send your guys over if they can? Instead of us saying, hey, would you happen to send your guys over, instead of us paying you? And, just a different approach, maybe?
Well, hold on a second though. So I guess that's the question then. It will be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
So it's going to be on the agenda. I think what Director Baradelli is suggesting is that it's possible that somebody, when it's read, somebody could make a motion to table. But yes, it will be on the printed agenda, unless right now the board is saying they don't want it on the agenda.
Just from the feedback from when I proposed it, I would not be surprised if that is the accurate feedback that you will receive, is that for the most part, they don't want it on the agenda.
All right, so here's the question then, why we bring it back again though? You heard that feedback, why is it coming back?
Well, no,
That's my
well,
question.
it was
That's a valid
because
question.
we had given her the directive to go
But-
get the exact price.
Yeah.
But that's not what the motion says, is approved, not this is the price, this is the cost, period. It says to approve it, that's different.
Well, if it's just discovery, it wouldn't be an agenda item.
No, but so I'm saying, you heard what we said, why is it coming back to this motion again? So that's what I'm asking, whoever put it back on, why is it back?
In my opinion, I don't think we fully vetted this out. I was being respectful of the fact that I added it late to the agenda.
Okay.
And I thought that maybe more discussion would be prudent.
Okay.
We're here, we're having the discussion, and if at the end of this, it doesn't seem like it's still a prudent move to continue to want to at least have a vote on this, I would like to. I'd like to have a vote on this personally, and I'd like to leave it on the agenda. But I'm one of 9, so.
I'm just curious.
All right, C, personnel, let's do 1 through 4. Employ a high school varsity assistant track coach, coach salary adjustments for varsity softball head coach and varsity softball assistant coaches, create a position of varsity high school assistant boys tennis coach, and approve spring sports coaches.
Scott, that looks really good.
Yes,
D.
standard business. and this is getting everyone in line for what they should have. D, overnight math counts, PMEA region, overnight field trips, overnight math counts. It's starting to
What
get
is
late.
overnight?
Overnight field trips, PMEA region chorus, FBLA leadership conference, and math counts. These are all things Dr. Rowe talked about before, and all of our overnight field trips have male and female chaperones. Fair enough. Cool. Number 2, approval to begin process of entering into a co-op sponsorship with Western Beaver for wrestling. We love shared services. This is great with other districts that are local. And 3, commend Mrs. Susan Metelsky PMEA Citation of Excellence Award. Dr. Rowe talked about this. Luke brought up a great thing for a personnel file. Anything else?
Luke, you're up, buddy. I'm sorry. I'm new. I'm trying to get caught up. I was looking at one of the 100 policies, and it has to do with review of instructional materials by parents and guardians.
Can you tell me what number you're looking at?
105 the code 105.1. In the guidelines, it says the following conditions shall apply to any request. Number 6 is no more than 1 request per semester. This might be for nothing. May be made by any parent or guardian or student for each child enrolled. So if we're taking 4, 5, 6 classes, and they would like to review material, they can only pick 1 class, is how I'm reading that.
No. If somebody said they wanted to review the materials for all of the classes that their kids are taking, we would absolutely make those available.
So what does that go towards? What does that number 6 go towards?
I'm assuming it's requesting to see those materials multiple times per semester.
Same class, maybe?
Same class, sure.
The way I read it is exactly how I shared it with you. It just seems like either A, it's again limiting parents' ability.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, this was
This was June of 2019.
yeah.
No more than.
It's not on here. No.
No. This is outside of anything.
Okay.
Sorry, I could talk this offline again.
No, that's fine. I appreciate you bringing it up in this forum. I will look at the policy in its entirety and then speak to number 6 at our next meeting.
All right, that's all. That's it.
Sure.
Sorry, guys.
Any public comments?
So, clarification, because the whole police officer thing is so confusing between all of this. So the next meeting, you're voting to approve it, to have it, an officer here at the meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
It sounds
Yes,
like
that will be on the
I thought it was tabled. At the end of the meeting, Luke pulled it up and said,
withdrawn.
that's it, we're tabling it.
It was with.
But
Yeah,
now
it-
it's back?
It was withdrawn at that time.
Right, so now it's back, and you're going to approve it.
Well, we're gonna vote.
Vote to approve it?
Or
The
reject.
way that it's,
Vote on it.
Or
It may or may
reject.
not be.
Okay, vote or reject, okay, gotcha.
the way
I'm
it's written
so
on the
confused.
agenda, it always
Right.
says, you
Okay.
know, vote to approve, and then they say yes or no.
Okay.
They approve it, they don't approve it.
All right. That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Anything else? Good night.